That's a bit loud. Let's turn that down just a little bit. There we go. Well, welcome back, everybody. This is technically our eighth stream of our ongoing game, or D&D solo adventure actual play. Hope everybody's doing all right. We're gonna jump back in with Leah and get caught up on her things real quick. And hopefully you guys are doing all right. I'm doing pretty well today. Hope you guys had a good week, get a good weekend, and hopefully you're ready for Monday. This stream doing these little D&D solo plays have been really fun to do on Sundays and kind of get me worked up and get me ready for Monday, kind of in the weekend on a high note. So that's always fun. So hopefully you guys are doing well. Of course, the chat's open, so if you guys have any questions about what we're going to do and anything like that, we can take the time and talk about any of that. I'm sending out a tweet just to see if we get any extra stragglers sort of coming in. So while I'm doing that, you know, what's going on with you guys? Things going well with you? For me, things are going pretty well. So I play D&D one of my groups. So I play 2 weekly groups D&D for those who are new. And one of my groups we've been playing online for about half a year now. We've been playing for longer, but we've been playing online for about half a year now. We're finally getting to the point where one of our longtime players, their schedule's finally changing, so we're going to be able to go back to in-person play. So we're all really excited. So we're going to start doing in-person sessions, I believe, sometime in June, hopefully in the start of June. It's been a long time, so it'll be good to see, because honestly, I haven't seen any of their faces in like real time since then. We're all local, but we all have our own things going on, and so the only time we really get together most of the time is to jump in. Well, actually, I take that back. We did play board game night one time during the past like 6 months, and then they had a party. One of our friends hosted a party, but I wasn't able to go to it. So, but this will be the first time I've seen most of them in many months. So I'm really excited. So other things we got going on. I saw the Guardians of the Galaxy movie. That was fun. You know, I felt like it was a little bit longer than probably it needed to be, and the cast is a little bloated at this point. It's certainly up from the 5 that are sort of in the first movie, and it kind of gets weighed down with that. But it's still fun, right? It's nice to have. You can definitely feel like sort of James Gunn's influence back in the movie, which regardless of how you feel about any of that, it definitely feels sort of has that sort of iconic kind of Guardians of the Galaxy feel that we've kind of gotten used to. Otherwise, you know, YouTube's been giving me some headaches. I've been uploading some videos on YouTube, and I'm dealing with copyright claims on clearly fair use things, and dealing with uploading one of these streams, and it ended up hanging, and I had to restart it over. Actually, I think it's still uploading now. Yeah, it's still uploading right now, but we're getting there. So hopefully, you know, fingers crossed we're not gonna have any issues this time. But yeah, that's it. All right, that's probably enough. Just kind of chittering around. I'm sure some other people kind of follow in, but let's go ahead and a little bit of housekeeping about some of the things that I did kind of sort of in between since last stream, since we kind of has a few different irons in the fire. So I wanted to jump in and do that. Let me get over there, and we can sort of pull this up, and then I'll switch over the view so you guys can look at what I'm looking at. All right, here we go. Let's get that swapped over. There we go. All right, yeah. So kind of sort of current session here. It's gonna be spring weather 22. We've got some housekeeping items I just want to talk about. So I ended up we had a magic item that I didn't know what it was going to be from last time that we got as sort of a treasure. We knew it was going to be some sort of common consumable magic item. I ended up rolling it up, and it ended up being a first level spell scroll of Ensnaring Strike. Unfortunately, Ensnaring Strike is a ranger spell, and of course Leah is a wizard. You know, our main character is a wizard. And honestly, I'll just bring her up. Oop, there we go. So there's Leah. let me just pull her over here, and then we can kind of look at this over here, side by side. So we ended up getting the spell scroll that was not going to be useful for her and that's actually a really commonly overlooked rule in 5e because it's kind of different than sort of previous editions. But specifically for spell scrolls, if you have to be able to cast that spell, so it has to be sort of in your class list for spells. And Ensnaring Strike is a ranger spell, so obviously as a wizard, can't use it. So I decided, all right, well, that's kind of a very easy just shopping thing where she's just kind of offloading some treasures and didn't really want to take up time in the stream doing that. But then I felt like I had to document it because I started at 50% of market price, so 25 gold. And then I did a roll for bartering for her, set the DC at 12, as that's what it was. I ended up getting randomly. She had a success, and then I did sort of a percentage roll to see, okay, how much in addition to the 25%, and then I actually ended up rolling 100%. And I was like, all right, I should probably document that. I'm not sure anybody's going to believe me anyways, since I rolled, 100 on the D100, but that's what happened. And so I felt like rather than just selling the gold and taking the 50 gold, it would be much better to make that sort of narratively more consistent that she made a trade for a first level scroll, so it was just kind of an equal trade. That's what she did. So she had 3 options. I kind of rolled randomly for wizard scrolls, for False Life, Grease, or Longstrider. I ended up taking Grease. None of those options were super fun. None of them really kind of jumped out at me as would be like super great choice. But of those that we got, Longstrider's great, but it only lasts for an hour, so that makes it's incredibly situational. And False Life is fine, but it's not really a spell that's useful much after you kind of pass first level. And I was kind of looking for something that's a little bit more. It's going to be something that she could use, because the idea is that she got a wizard scroll, and wizards have the ability to copy scrolls into their book. So she can take this from being a one-time only spell to a permanent spell. So I was like, okay, I'll choose Grease. And Grease is incredibly situational. And basically what you do is you just make a floor slippery. It's essentially what you do. And that can like trip people up. And though I don't think the spell specifically says it in 5th edition, but in earlier editions, it's considered mundane Grease, which means that you can like light it on fire, which I think is very useful. So something like that and she's a lot more elemental focused, so I thought having Grease, she's got some fire spells, so those could sort of like kind of work together, and I think that's why she would sort of pick that. So in addition to that, we also we know that she cast Find Familiar as a ritual, but I hadn't really done that yet, so I figured we'd go ahead and sort of give her, and let me do this, that's basically everything. Yeah. Go ahead and sort of like draft it up, because I didn't want to give her just sort of the standard kind of bestial companions, because that's what a lot of them really are. So I was like, okay, well, let's give her something different. And so I kind of jumped around. Then we kind of decided on giving her a Mephit, because she had seen Mephits, and they're sort of like elemental, kind of demonish kind of looking creatures. So I kind of took a familiar that was already existed. I took the Imp, which is a familiar that already exists for specific warlocks, and then I took the Flame Mephit stat block, and then I just kind of blended them to create a familiar that's not super powerful, but is more powerful than having like a cat, and also one that feels much more flavorful to Leah, being that sort of primordial elemental sort of focused wizard. So I went ahead and gave it the name Igni. It's a tiny elemental, so it can like sit on her shoulder. It's got pretty bad AC. It's got okay hit points. It's got more hit points than Leah does, though that's not hard as a first level wizard. But its stats aren't super great. But it does have some good trainings: Deception, Insight, Persuasion, Stealth. But a lot of those are not going to be super useful. At least Persuasion and Deception aren't going to be super useful, because I wanted to use a situation where I didn't want it to be overpowered, and Leah's already kind of got a little bit of social Grace because she's got a +2 to charisma, even though she's not trained in any sort of social skills. And I didn't want it to sort of overshadow that. So I decided to give it, specifically, it can only speak primordial or elemental, which is one of the things that Leah can speak. So Leah can communicate with it, and we'll go into that a little bit more. So Leah can talk to it, but somebody like Ott, which is one of her companions, doesn't speak primordial, so she can't interact as far as being able to hold a conversation with this thing or get information from it. Because one of the big things we use sort of familiars for, of course, is trying to scout and gather information and things like that. So it can still do that. It can still like watch people and get an idea of situations, but it doesn't understand common. So if they're having any sort of conversations, it can't pick up any cues from that, which is nice. So it gives it utility, but not too much utility, and especially doesn't take away from the things that like our sidekick Ott can do, who's really stealthy and can scout, and that's one of the big things that she does. So as far as abilities, it's got a false appearance. So when it's still, it can become indistinguishable from mundane flame or fire, which I thought would be really good for sort of its perception. And right, it's a little fire elemental, so it can sort of sneak in and jump into like a bad guy's campfire or something like that and just sit in there and just kind of watch them. Additionally, it can use light as an action. It can make its Igni, the method, can shed 10 feet of bright light, 10 feet of dim light, or no light at all. So it's kind of cool. That kind of gives it a utility because we made sure we didn't give Leah, when we were building her, the light spell, so they were using very mundane light sources. So it's nice to have this method so when Igni's out, right, because we can summon and desummon them. When Igni's out and just like sitting on Leah's shoulder or whatever, it can cast 10 feet of bright light or dim light, so they get a little bit of magic, but not a ton, and it's a magic source that can be killed, which is kind of scary, so we don't want to rely on it too much. More importantly are its actions. So when I gave it the cantrip Control Flames, because I felt like that was very much sort of flavorful with a flame method, and one of the things that it can do is that it can double or halve the light or change the color of mundane light. So we could have a torch burning, and then Igni can use its power on the torch to make the torch, cast more light, brighter light, less dim light, or change the color. Like if we wanted to take it from being like very, very pronounced, maybe it only gives off like that sort of infrared red kind of light. So it helps them maybe sneak around a little bit more, while Leah and Ott both have dark vision, so they can still see pretty well using it. Control Flames also can expand fire. It can extinguish flames. I gave it just a standard sort of claw rake you can do that does slashing and fire damage. That's sort of self-defense. Now, the way that 5e sort of presents familiars is that they're not really supposed to be used for combat. I'm going to be a little wishy-washy on that, just because we're playing a solo campaign, and so anytime that she really needs to lean on another character or another sort of resource to help her out, whether that's a sidekick or a familiar, I don't feel too bad about having this sort of sidekick familiar that can do some sort of damage, but again, not a ton. I also gave it a Fire Breath, which is something that the method has sort of already. I just kind of downplayed it a little bit. It's a very easy dex save. It's dex save 11, does a 15-foot cone, does 2d6 fire, half on a save. Now, the only thing that I changed with this is that I set it up so it would scale with Leah's cantrips. So Leah's level 1 now, but if she reaches level 5, all her cantrips go up by 1 additional die. So while the Fire Breath does 2d6 damage now and recharges on the 6, which means we have to roll to see if Igni can do the thing again. But once Leah reaches level 5, instead of doing 2d6 fire damage, it would do 3d6 damage, and so on and so forth. Just so it's not totally useless if it ever gets in a scrap and actually has to use some of its combat actions. But again, I don't suspect that it's going to be doing that very often. So yeah, that's most of the cleanup stuff. So we can kind of jump into it, I think. Now, where we left off last time is that Leah had just returned to Split Valley Oasis after talking with Akari and finishing up that job, dealing with the Myrmidon, and she talked with some people in town, one of the traders in town, about the curse that's on the corrupted water Myrmidon plate that they have after they unfortunately ended up killing the water elemental, even though they were trying not to. They were trying to capture it, but the fight was really difficult and kind of went sideways. And to preserve her own life because she was in a bad situation, they ended up killing the water elemental, which unfortunately is going to put a damper on her conversations with Omer, who also wanted to sort of tag and release the elemental so he could research it more. And unfortunately now she has to have a conversation with Omer about the original reason she's here, which is to talk to him about Harol, the librarian's death back at Riverside Conservatory, and what that has to deal with the previous research the two of them were doing. So I think we'll pick it up there. So I think Leah's going to look for Omer. I think Omer is also staying in Dansenberg Caravanserai, so he's staying at the inn, same inn that the others are staying at. So she probably takes a little bit of time to sort of track him down, and then tries to get Omer to agree to, of course, have a conversation with him, or with her, sorry, with her about the reason that she's here. And she kind of touched on it briefly when she first found Omer when she got in, but she got tied up with Omer's work with the Myrmidon, and then of course with Gimbal and the slavers camp. But now that those things have all gotten finally resolved and kind of pushed out of the way, we can get back to sort of the main thrust as why she's here, which is talking with Omer. So she's going to sort of find a time. I think Omer's probably reluctant to kind of sit down with her, and she's going to try to corner him and get a sit down time, and they can share a drink and kind of talk about things. So I think my idea that it's probably sort of after a full days of work, so it's probably in the later afternoon, early evening. She kind of probably invites Omer to her actual sort of private room back at the inn, and uses her. So she has a magic teapot, of course, that is always full and always hot with tea, and she sort of shares some tea with him, and wants to ask him about Harol. And so she wants to know, did Harol reach out to you? Because we kind of talked about it briefly, but Harol sent me a very strange letter at home asking about some questions about our previous research. And by the time that I packed up my things and reached Riverside Conservatory to talk to him about it, of course I wasn't allowed in, and we're kind of nods because Omer knows. Both of being part of that previous research team, the entire research team has been discredited, and nobody really wants to work with them in that sort of fashion. Their findings that they did about sort of the elemental and primordial origins of dragon did not go over well. It was basically decried by the entire, I guess, academic community, their research and results, the report they did, and their findings. So that's why they're all kind of scattered around doing different things, and that's why she came out here, because Omer was dealing with this specific elemental. And so she's asking, did Harol reach out to you? And so this is going to be our first Oracle roll, I feel like. Hold on. I'll grab my Oracle thing. So if you're new to our Oracle rolling system, we use a 1d20. Everything's in the middle. If we roll high, the answer is yes. This is when we ask. It's for a solo play, so when we don't know things, we can sort of ask questions to try to develop the answers. So we want to know, did Harol reach out to Omer at any point? And I think this is a straight 50-50. I don't think that it's either likely or unlikely. I think this is just something we don't know. So I think it's just a flat 1d20 roll. Okay, we rolled a 12, which is a yes, but it's a yes, but because it's just on the shy side of yes. So it's going to have some sort of hindrance or detriment, something that's not as clear. So we're going to roll another d20 to kind of figure out what that hindrance or alteration is going to be. So we rolled an 8, so that's lose, gain, or fumble a resource. Yeah, okay. So I think that, because remember, Omer's not particularly happy with Leah. Because he kind of screwed her as far as it came to dealing with the water elemental. She ended up taking sort of a job from like one of the competitors going after the Myrmidon, and they ended up getting there first and dealing with it and killing it. And obviously Omer had bought all this expensive research equipment, and they got lost in the middle of the lake, but back in, what is it, episode 4, and fished that out, and then hired people, spent all the money he had earned basically hiring people to come with him to find the thing, and so they could, tag it and then start researching it. So he's not particularly happy with her, and I think that he's still kind of put a bag. He's like, I don't really want to help you. There's nothing in it for you. You did me dirty. So why am I going to help you and figure out, yeah, Harol reached out to me, but I'm not going to tell you anything about that. Why would I tell you anything about that? And in a way, right, that's kind of petty, but we've also determined maybe Omer's a little petty, so that makes sense. So I think that what Leah uses as that bargaining chip is that she still has the corrupted Myrmidon plate armor. And so I think she uses that as sort of a bargaining chip to sort of get his insight into it. And so yeah, I think that he agrees in exchange for, learning more about the plate. I think Leah will go on to tell him, I took this to another sort of magic person who was in town at the trading post. He was able to give us some insight, and it seems like the plate armor itself is cursed. They weren't able to give me a ton of insight as to what's going on with it, other than the fact that there's some sort of basic sentience that's still within it. It could be dangerous, it could be cursed. Obviously, we don't want to put it on, but we need to research it further. But the tools to do that, which Lee already knows, is in Karjunton, is at Riverside Conservatory. That's going to be our best opportunity to find, our closest and best opportunity to finding any information with which to research this to understand more about it. So I think I'm going to give her a persuasion check. I'm going to give her advantage because she's got this really, really big bargaining chip, and she's dealing with somebody else who's also going to be very, very interested in this material. So I'm just going to give her, let's go. All right, 13, so a 15. Let's see what the DC is. Those are 3d6 DCs. So that's a DC 12. Okay, so successful. So he's like he doesn't really want to. He's still kind of feeling kind of hurt about the situation. Feels like he kind of got, exploited and used, and she kind of went behind his back. But the lure of being able to study that plate, that's almost as good. That's almost as good as studying the Myrmidon itself. And we do know that the plate is cursed. So that's going to give us an insight as to, what was going on with that thing and what caused maybe this curse or whatever caused this corruption with the water elemental. So yeah, Omer begrudgingly agrees, kind of drinks his tea. Okay, so now we need to kind of figure out, okay, what has Harol's loom? So I think he probably produces a letter that's probably very similar to the one that Leah received from Harol, from the librarian, who is now apparently dead? Question mark? Because, of course, we weren't there, we didn't see it. That's just what we've been told. It's secondhand information about Harol's death. Does he? I guess that's a oracle roll. does he know anything beyond the same letter that Leah's got? Because Leah hadn't shown him the letter. So I think that's just a flat D20 roll. Yes. Okay. Yes. So that's a natural 20. So that means yes, plus there's some sort of edge. There's something else that he's going to bring to this conversation, or that comes along with this. 6. Alright, so that's forces a hard bargain or choice. Which doesn't really make sense here, but the other thing that we can use for that is it's a plus or minus resource. So he's going to have some additional resource. Is that another letter? I think, let's see, what else does he have? Yeah, I think he probably, maybe he had some correspondence with him, or maybe Harol's letter gives us a little extra information about things. And for that one, I do want to use, so I'm going to use the Mythogeme emulator. Let's pull that up, just so that will give us, I'm trying to remember, I think it is, I don't know what we do. That's not what I'm looking for. Okay, let's go with that. Let's go with mini. Harm the physical. That's what I'm looking for, is the mini. So he has some extra information that talks about harming the physical. All right, let's look at our threads real quick. Let's see if any of that kind of resonates with something. So we're doing that. It's not really answered. So we have the unanswered question. We still haven't really determined what the question is, but if we look at that through the lens of harm the physical, yeah, so I think it talks about, I think this specifically deals with what actually happened to Harol Smudges, what happened to our librarian. I think that there's writing in there in which Harol writes to, specifically in sort of his correspondence to Omer, where he speaks about he has a fear for his own safety. Like, maybe he was going around asking these questions, and it may have been brought up by something not specifically their research, something, you know, sort of tangentially related. And he writes that he, you know, when he started asking questions about things, I think that people started acting weird in the conservatory. And then sort of like he felt like maybe people were following him, or somebody was always sort of like monitoring what he was doing. And, you know, he probably had there's probably a little bit of intimidation, maybe some very sort of cloak and dagger kind of, you need to not look into this, you need to leave this alone. And so Harol probably writes in a letter that he's, you know, fears for his own life. Like something's weird and somebody's intimidating him, and he doesn't necessarily feel safe. So whatever he was onto, and that's not going to be explained in the letter, because I feel like at that point, if Harol knows that he's being monitored and he sends this letter off, if they got their hold of their letter and found out what he was trying to tell other people about what he was looking into, that other people would be upset and try to, you know, it would involve Omer as well. Like, they would start coming after Omer and the other people of this research group if he started sharing sort of his concerns. So that didn't happen, but Harol's been, you know, as the pun goes, smudged out, being his last name. So yeah, that's it. Okay, so I think that gives them very good reasons to agree to travel together to go to Karjunton, which makes sense to me. So if that's where we're at, all right. So we have our conversation. Omer, we're going to, you know, entreat him to come along to investigate the corrupted Myrmidon armor with us. We know that Harol, and actually let me go ahead and add that here. So we know that Harol, Hmm. Let's say he was being intimidated. Now, those who've been with us a while and from the very beginning know that Harol hid their research, the research they had done previously, the research that discredited them. He had hid that the results, the report from that research, somewhere in the conservatory. He kept it safe, even though he wasn't supposed to. Harol Smudges was kind of a cantankerous old gnome, but he understood being a librarian. He understood the value of that knowledge, even incorrect knowledge. Understands the importance of keeping that and documenting that for people who research those avenues further, so don't end up researching the same thing somebody's already done, right? So they need to find out if their research is still around, or if somebody's taking that too. That gives us where we are. Now we also have to have a conversation with Ott. So for those who are new, Ott is one of our sidekick compatriots. Leah originally hired Ott to guide her out to the Oasis here, Split Valley Oasis, to seek out Omer, specifically to talk about this issue. And she knew Ott sort of from previous adventuring. Ott, of course, is a very large female gnoll, so she's a giant hyena person that's about 7 feet tall. And she's a bad bee, right? But she's a sellsword. She's a mercenary. She's an acquaintance that Leah has, but she's not a friend. She doesn't have any skin in this game. She doesn't really care about it. So now we're just gonna basically need to ask her while she's in town if she wants to come with them back to Karjunton. So, all right. Well, here we can just get rid of this housekeeping stuff. We don't need that. Let's go ahead and get rid of that. All right. So, and we know that's one of the things that I did in between sessions is that I came up with Karjunton and did some work on it. So now we know the name of the place. Quite big city. It's got, I think, 52,000 people that live in it, which is relatively large for, a vaguely medieval style city. Quite large. So yeah, we'll ask Ott if she wants to accompany us. Pretty simple question. We'll just make a flat D20 roll. She maybe will or not. Like she can get work from here, so it's not super important. It's not like she can't get work. There's a ton of traders here who will need guiding services and protection and caravan guards and things like that. So, given the sort of adventures they've had together so far, we just want to know: do you want to come with us on the trip to Karjunton? Okay, so Ott says 4, which is a no. I'm not gonna do that. I'm probably gonna work with something else here. Okay, so that gives us an answer. Does Leah try to convince her more? That's a good question. I don't think that Leah... Again, they're not friends, right? But Leah also knows that... Has seen Ott in action. Ott's a pretty good fighter. She will definitely ensure that they don't get lost on the way back, probably. And Leah herself doesn't really have any survival skills. And Omer has even less than her. Because Omer is basically just a basic commoner, other than he's got some research background. So does she try to convince her? I don't think she's... I think what she's going to do instead is she'll probably try to see if there's somebody else that can maybe help them. So one of the things that we talked about, or we would talk about, is that if we're going to leave, if Lee's going to leave Split Valley Oasis and make the trek to Karjunton. We have it down here in our notes. Let me pull it up so you guys can see it. Right here. Which is travel with a caravan. Because one of the things we'd look to do is we'd want to get hired as guards or guide, right? It's nice to travel, and if you're going to make that journey anyways, you might as well get paid for that journey if you can swing it. Now, that would be a hell of a lot easier with Ott. Because Ott, you know, wears armor, has a bow, is a good guide, right? Plenty of survival. But without her, it may be a little bit more difficult. Now, obviously, Leah's gotten a little bit of a reputation around here, right? She very quickly dealt with the water myrmidon. She was able to sort of push the slavers out of the area. I mean, the people in the Oasis probably aren't too down on the specifics, because she didn't really do it by like intimidating them or anything. She just helped them finish the mission that was keeping them here. So she's got a little bit of notoriety, so I think if she has the opportunity of being hired on a trade caravan as a guard. Omer certainly won't be, because Omer's got no combat survival skills. So he'll have to pay his way, but she might be able to. So I guess, yeah, well, so she'll kind of spend the day kind of poking around, seeing if she can pick up some work that way. She can find a trader that's headed in that direction and is maybe looking for some protection. So one of the things that I want to do right now is that I want to roll a d12, because I want to see if anything pops up while we're doing that. Well, she's kind of thrumming around town. No. We need to roll a 1 or a 12 for that to happen. We didn't roll either, so she's gonna keep on keeping on. I do want to ask you a question, but I don't know. I'm not sure she would ask that question, or she would care to ask that question. Anything about the cultists that we ran into before in the trading post. Now, we say cultists, and cultists, you know, in modern, you know, in our world, has a very derogatory sort of interpretation, right? It's got a very negative kind of association to it. The idea in sort of like even medieval times and antiquity is that a cult just means like a section of belief, right? The same way that we look at, you know, Christians maybe are like Presbyterian or Catholic or Methodist, and right, all just different versions or followings of sort of the same basic idea. So you can have a cults that follow a specific god, but they're not inherently like sacrificing humans or something like that. Like they're just maybe a little bit weird to people because they have slightly different beliefs. Now I wanted to know if that cult had anything to do with sort of the people we found with the water myrmidon in that sort of underground, you know, half-drowned shrine. But I'm not sure Leah cares to ask about that. It's not really, like, that's pretty much done as far as she's concerned. So I don't think that she's going to try to chase down that threat at this point. I think she's more interested in getting to Karjunton, finding out more about what's going on there. So I think that's what we're going to do instead. Alright, so are there any supply... Well, we need to find out. So we're just going to ask an oracle to see if... Ask an oracle question to see if she can find a caravan that wants to take her on as sort of a guard, as an employer. I'm going to give her a +3 to this. Like I said, she's got a little bit of notoriety now in the area. So I think it's a little bit likely that somebody, if the opportunity is put out there, that somebody's be like, yeah, you should come with us. Because clearly you know how to handle dangerous things like 24 armed slavers or, you know, this out-of-control elemental. Alright, so that is a 9. So no. The answer is no. While that's good, no, there aren't people in the trading post that have seen her actually do combat, right? Who have seen her, you know, physically be able to do this. Like, she has a reputation for it, but nobody in the trading post, other than, I guess, Ott and Omer and Norkruth, have seen her do these sorts of things. So otherwise, it's just kind of basic. So it's just kind of a basic reputation that she's kind of popped up pretty quickly in the last, week and a half or so. So if we rolled a 9, which is a no, but it's just shy of what we need, so it's a no, but we get some sort of edge with it as well, some sort of benefit. Okay, so 7 means acts against their own best interest. Now, obviously, this is a positive for us, so it's not going to be Leah necessarily that acts against her own best interest. I think it's going to be somebody else. All right, so it's going to be one of our NPCs. So let's take a look at our NPCs real quick. So we've got Akari, Gimbal, Norkruth, Omer. So we've got 6 right now. So let's just roll a d6 and see which one of those is going to do something for us against our own best interest. Ooh, that's 6. Which is Drin. Oh, the half-orc baronet. Interesting. Alright, so, and we can look at the map real quick, because if you don't know. So, hold on, let's get over here. Bring this down a little bit so you guys can see it. So we are in this hex right here. Right, that's where the trading post is, and Drin's Keep is down here. And each of these hexes represents about an hour of travel. So it's a few hours away. If you're making good time, you can get there in a day, pretty easily. If not, and you spend the night somewhere on the way, and then you're there by the next day. So that is Drin's Keep. So Drin is a minor noble. He's a half-orc. And so he's going to do something against his best interest that helps us. Now, what the heck would that be? Let's use the emulator. Let's see if it'll pump us out a meaning real quick. What's this question? Deceive stalemate. I'm not sure. There's not really a stalemate that's going on with Drin, I don't think. Okay, no. So I can't think of anything, but maybe it's something about Drin's reputation is going to give us an advantage on whatever our next check is that we're going to look for. That we can use that for. So that's just how we're going to interpret that. So the answer was no, but something about when news gets back about her, talking with Drin a little bit, then that's going to change whatever we look for next. And so since we didn't get hired on, but I bet we can find a caravan. Actually, I'm not even going to roll for it because I'm sure this is a very active trading post, right? It's very large. There's like 1,000 people that live here. There are always, caravans coming in and out all the time. So I think finding a caravan that's headed east, that's headed towards, flip that back over, that's headed east, that's headed towards Karjunton, isn't going to be difficult. It's the next sort of major settlement that we know of other than the trading post. And it's directly east. So I think it's very easy to find that there's going to be at least one of the caravans that's leaving town is going to be headed east on their way to Karjunton. So being able to travel so that way we don't have to travel alone or have to worry about getting lost or anything like that, it's probably not going to happen. So we're going to attach to a caravan. I'm not even going to roll to see if there's a caravan headed that way. So I think probably where I'm going to say that we get the advantage with is probably in our resupply. So we're gonna do some resupply, see if there's any gear, because we have a little bit of gold. So Lee's got 72 gold. And Something about Drin's going to give us some help. So is there anything that we want to buy specifically? Omer's going to handle his own expenses. We're not paying for Omer to come with us. We do have something that's quite heavy, though. I think it would be nice if we got like a mule or a donkey to kind of help us, because again, that Myrmidon plate is legitimate plate armor, and that's heavy. That's like 50 plus pounds. So I think it's likely that we'd maybe want to pick up an animal that can kind of carry that weight for us. Because Leah, even though Leah's got a +1 strength, that's 50 pounds of gear on top of her normal gear, which is, you know, normal sort of target weight's probably going to be close to about 50 pounds. I don't think she's going to be hoofing 100 pounds on her back. And Omer's certainly not. So I think we're going to look for something to buy. So, okay. A mule is pretty inexpensive, so I think we could get a mule pretty easily. Okay, and then we have to sort of buy the tack that goes with that. So in total, that's 8 for the mule. Bit and bridle is 2, so that's up to 10. We need to buy a pack saddle, which is another 5, so we're up to 15. And then we're going to need to buy some feed. So just so we can kind of get an idea of that, let's make some notes real quick. Alright, so let's get up here. Boop, boop. So we got 15 GP, and then... Okay, feed's only 5 copper per day. But of course we're going to use, so I'm going to add this down here, because we definitely have enough money to pay for this. I'm going to add this down here to, over here on the left on the sheet, and I think we're going to go to, we may as well go to a D8 for everything, because, yeah, so let's go up to a D8. So I usually stop at 1d6 for the resource die when we're carrying stuff on our back, but if we have an animal to carry our stuff, go up here, we can carry more. And we can carry even more if we have a vehicle, but I don't want to spin a vehicle for us. We just need a nice mule to walk with us. Alright, so let's just roll our d8, and that'll be a d8 times our 5 copper, and that'll help us determine our price. Alright, so we can get feed for about a silver, which is an incredibly good price. So 15.1 GP. So that's our sort of cost. I think that's the only thing we need to buy. I don't think Leah... Let me check the sources right now, but I don't think there's going to be anything else that Leah either has the money to purchase or would want to purchase. Let's see. Actually, you know what? I screwed that up before I get too far. Because we don't just roll the d8 for feed. We gotta roll the d4 and the d6. So it was 2, 4, 9. Okay, so 9 times 0.5, so 4.5. Okay, so that's actually 4.5. It's actually that. Not that it's going to make that much of a difference. And then we're going to do a d8 for rations and a d8 for torches. So rations, I believe, are gold a day. Let me double check. Oh, they're 5 silver a day. Alright, so gold for that. And then a copper for the torch. So about 16.5 for our shopping. So I think she's going to do some bartering, and that's the thing that we're going to get the advantage from Dren. So something between the outfitter that we're getting, and Dren, there's some sort of connection there. We don't necessarily need to RP that out, but they know of Dren, and then when you speak that, oh yeah, you know, I spent time out at Dren's place, and, you know, he had me spend the night and talk to him a little bit. This probably impresses the person, so she'll roll some basic charisma. I mean, you gotta go with a natural 20, right? Alright. So what percentage of this is she gonna end up paying? 87. Okay. That's gonna be some quick math real quick. 1646. 87, right? Get out of here. Yeah. Okay, 1432. Alright, so let's see, we have 57 gold, 9 silver, and 8 copper remaining. And we are outfitted with everything that we need. And we have let's add this down here, got a mule. Mule attack. So we've got everything we need. And alright, so we did our outfitting for our journey. So we can sort of delete this bits out here. Actually, I'm going to take the stuff that's down here where we were talking about what's going on, and then we're going to move this up. This is what we're actually working on. There we go. Now you guys can see that as well. So we talked to Omer. We sort of prepared for our excursion. We're not taking naught with us, so we don't need to buy arrows. We did buy supplies, we did bounce. We are going to travel with the trade caravan, but we are not doing that as guards or guides. So we're not getting paid, so we gotta do this by ourselves. So the overland travel is gonna take about 2 weeks. So you can see on the left there, starting off in the trading post. We gotta go across this one, and so this is region size hexes at this point. So the hex is kind of Russian doll in size, so this is our next to highest. So each of these guys represents about a week of travel, so it's about a week to get to that middle hex, and then about 2 weeks to get to Karjunton. And that will allow us to use our overland travel rules, which we haven't used yet. And I haven't added those yet to this specific document. So I just have that sort of written down on my own. In time, if you guys want, we can do, when we do one of our sort of streams during the week, we can kind of jump in and talk about it a little bit. But we've wrapped up basically everything we need to do in Split Valley Oasis. And so we are ready to take our travel. Is there anything else that we need to do before we leave? I can't think of anything. We've got all our gear. We've got our, actually, I don't have it down on here, but I'm going to go ahead and, did I add it? I did not, okay. So we still have, I'm going to add it down here to her. Actually, I'm going to add it in here. So she has a scroll of grease, because she hasn't, she doesn't have the time, and she didn't want to spend the 50 gold it would take to transfer that over to permanently to her spellbook. So right now she's just got the Scroll of Grease. And then we just need to do our travel. Grab this here. I'm going to move this up here because we're going to need to be using this. So we know it's the 12th, or not the 12th, the 22nd, Spring Mother. So it's starting to warm up a little bit, but today it's still very cold. The wind's gusting. It's kind of overcast and foggy in the morning as they get ready to sort of set out with the caravan. And we need to figure out if anything happens. So the way that this sort of overland travel area works is that you have 1d4 sort of scenes that happen per week of travel. So I only ended up rolling 1 in my setup for this for the first week. So let's see what we come across. Alright. This is, I think it's a 20 chart, right? Yeah. Okay. So they're traveling on their way. Like this should be a relatively easy travel. We're traveling across open ground. It's grasslands for the most part they're crossing. So there's not hills or mountains or anything that we need to cross that should be too difficult. Let's see what kind of hops out along the way. 8. Okay. So 8 means there's some sort of gear or vehicle failure. So I'm just going to ask the Oracle, is it a piece of our gear that fails? So either hers or Omer's, or I guess the mule's. Yep, okay. So I'm just going to roll a 1d3. It's going to be, if it's 1 or 2, it's going to be something of Leah's. If it's going to be a 3 or 4, it's going to be something of Omer's. If it's 5 or 6, it's going to be something on the mule. Okay, so something with Omer. Let's say that since we don't really have anything written up for Omer, he's probably carrying just kind of basic traveler stuff. Now we have the mule. This is a good question. Would she share the mule's capacity with Omer? Is she still trying to get in Omer's good graces? I'm just gonna roll a d20. If it's high, yes. No. Okay, so she's not trying to get in Omer's good graces, so she probably would have been like, "Hey, look, I paid for the mule. You didn't pay for the mule, so you can carry your own stuff." And then I think they're walking, and they're probably let's see how many days they're in. They're about 2 days into the travel in the first week, and they're walking and they're walking and they're walking, and then there's a snap, and I think that Omer's backpack, like when the straps on his pack just snaps and dumps his backpack on the ground, and kind of opens up and stuff kind of like falls all over the place out in the road. And so I think they take time to do that, to sort of pick up anything. Unfortunately, Leah does not have mending or anything that would help to repair that. And I'm going to assume Omer doesn't either, but I'll give him an Oracle roll with a -5. Another natural 20. Even with the -5, that's still a 15. So Omer, I guess, has some sort of tool, like an auger or something, that's going to allow him to fix that. Now the question is will they be able to fix it in time where they're still with the caravan? No, I don't think that's even a question. There's safety in numbers. I think that they would immediately pick up Omer's stuff and put his stuff on the mule for now, and then he, when they get to camp, would make the repair to his backpack. So, just kind of a light issue. We'll go ahead and put this down in here. Omer's backpack strap snaps. Pack strap snaps. It's a little hard to say quickly. But he's able to repair that. That's not going to be an issue. Now, that would have been a much bigger issue if we hadn't picked up the mule, but thankfully we did, and so throwing Omer's pack on top of it, because the mule can carry, I think, a few 100 pounds or something, so adding that to it's not going to be that big of an issue. And he's going to have, he apparently has the stuff to fix it in camp, which I wasn't expecting him to have, but the dice rolls how they roll. Okay, so the first week of travel, other than the gear failure, is incredibly uneventful, and that's not surprising because we're traveling in a group. We're probably not going to have a lot of attacks or anything like that. I'm sure that there probably are some caravan guards, especially since Leah did not get hired as one of them, so I assume that there are some. So I think we just kind of jump straight into week 2. Should we do week 2? Actually, I'm going to take a short break just so I can use the bathroom, do things like that, and I'll be back in just a few minutes. So hang tight, and we will jump right back in with week 2 of travel very soon. Alright guys, see you in just a second. Bye. Alright, go ahead. We are back. Sorry, that took just a little bit longer than I thought. My kettle ended up turning off, so I had to reheat the water in it real quick. I got an electric kettle 2 weeks ago? 2 weeks ago, I think? And, you know, kind of one of those, every once in a while you get sort of an item that seems like it's going to be sort of like a real game changer. And surprisingly, an electric kettle has been it for me. I had a stovetop kettle before that, which was fine and worked really quite well, actually. It heated up very quickly and is very useful. Until I left it on to make tea, and then I walked away and put my headphones on, and I forgot about it and didn't hear it, and, you know, burned the crap out of it and made it unuseful. Completely unusable. So I had to toss that, so I was like, oh, well, I should probably get something that, even though I'd had that stovetop kettle for a while and hadn't had that problem, I was like, I should probably get something that's going to protect me from having that same issue over again. So I was like, oh, I'll get an electric kettle. That'll keep itself warm, and then, will turn itself off so it doesn't end up scalding if there's burning off all the water and all that sort of stuff. So I got an electric kettle, and I gotta tell you, I'm drinking a lot more tea. It makes it very, very easy. A lot more tea. Surprisingly less coffee, though, which is what I was using the stovetop kettle more for. which is fine. And I just brewed some tea real quick. This is actually ginger tea, which is really nice if you've never had it. If you like sort of like the spice of ginger, it's really nice. It's good for digestion and things like that. So if you have a upset stomach or heartburn, things of that nature, the ginger can kind of help with that. I don't have any of that right now. I just enjoy the taste of it. So I think this is what, like my 4th cup of tea already today, and then of course I have some water I'm drinking as well. Really good. It keeps me from getting like stuff in the back of my throat when I'm streaming, talking so much. So it's nice to have some both a cool and hot beverage to kind of help with that. Let's see what else is going on. Oh, one of the other things before we kind of jump back into it, I was playing started getting the Legend of Zelda. Started playing the Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword for the Switch. So I remember playing Skyward Sword back on the Wii when it came out, and I just could not grok the to be honest, kind of flighty motion controls with the Wii remote. So once I saw that it came up, it's like, oh well, I'll jump back in. I'll play that one, and I played it, and I've gotten a few hours into it, and it's been pretty good so far. I think I've actually gotten to the point where I'm actually further now than I was the first time I played it, because I didn't get that far into it because I got so frustrated with the motion controls. But now it's much easier, just using sort of the right analog stick for the motion of the sword, which I found was much more intuitive. And so that's much easier. Okay, it's enough about me waxing about other things that are going on. If you're new, you know, we our goal for the channel right now is to reach 20 followers, so we're doing that. So if you are enjoying the content and you want to see more of it, you can just drop a follow, and that way you'll get the notifications. Obviously, for the Sunday stream, we're trying to do this every Sunday. Also, occasionally do impromptu streams throughout the week. So the best way to sort of like get the notification that I'm going to be going live, because those don't really have a schedule. The best way to do that is, of course, to give a follow in Twitch, or if you just want to pick up some of the stuff and catch up on everything we've been doing. Obviously, this is episode 8 in the solo play series, so if you want to see how we got to this point, you can find all those videos over on YouTube, except for the 7th, the latest one. As I said, having some issues with the upload failed, so I had to re-upload it, and that's still working. But yeah, that's everything we got going on right now. Let's go ahead and, with that done, kind of hop back into things. So let's pull this back over so you guys can see what I'm looking at. There we go. Alright, oh, what I didn't do is I didn't add our 1d4. Let me do that 1d4 for our con save. Okay, 1. We're in a good position. Nice. Not sure if it's going to be an issue when we get there, but that's fine. Alright, so let's find out. So we're into the 2nd week of travel on our way to Karjunton. So if we look at the map real quick, we're now very firmly in this hex right here. So we've made it about halfway to Karjunton. Again, this is a road that Leah's pretty familiar with, because she followed this probably exact same road to get to the trading post, because she was coming from Karjunton. But so we'll head on back. Alright, so we've got another travel node. Let's find out what it is. We're going to roll our d20. Find out what sort of event happens while we're traveling. 13. Back up. So this is actually my DM's binder. And I actually use this when I'm running D&D, you know, whether that's for one person or a full group. And it's got all my sort of like quick reference things, the things that are helpful for me for running encounters. And this is a little bit different. If you want to see some of the more in-depth kind of local hex exploration we did, like chasing down the Myrmidon, you can find those over on YouTube. You can look at, I think, Chasing Down the Myrmidon, which is episode 6, I think. And you can see sort of like the local exploration, which is a lot more in-depth than sort of this overland travel where we're just kind of following a road for the most part. And you can see all the sort of weird hijinks that we kind of run into that way as we're searching for the Myrmidon to deal with it. We rolled a 13. Okay, we come across some sort of scenic vista. It's interesting. Let's roll a d6 to find out. Okay. Oh, that's 6, so that's weird. I'm pretty sure, yeah. Alright, so we see something weird on our journey that's not necessarily just sort of like a nice thing to kind of look across. It doesn't really do us any, it doesn't do us harm or anything like that. It's not something we need to fight or necessarily interact with. So we have a scenic vista. Any ideas for what it is that we kind of come across? Because it's got to be something weird, so that means that it's not something artificial, so it's not like a monument or something like that. It's not something natural, so it's not, you know, like a waterfall or something like that we come across. Or like a hoodoo or something like that. Something weird, which means usually I put things that's weird that are not necessarily of our plane. And actually I can roll a d20. That'll help us sort of like pin that down a little bit. Alright, that's 16, so our next to last, and I use this as just kind of built in with the tradition, so not that, Because undead are artificial, plants are obviously natural, and ooze is weird. But that's 17 through 20. Monstrosity is natural, humanoid is artificial, for people, giants are artificial, fiend. Okay, so something sort of demonic or devilly. So what do we think that we come across that's sort of in the open ground that's got sort of a fiendish sort of presence, sort of weirdness? It's very interesting. What could it be? I'm gonna get the idea that it's sort of like a, almost like a Yellowstone sort of steam vent, right? Hot spring, explosive hot spring, except that I think this is very sulfur and it's probably got some sort of built in, like there's some sort of planar introduction. So let's just make this could be like sulfur springs. Let's do this for now. Sulfur springs. Oh, it's UR. Okay. So it's just sort of like this bubbling, yellowish, gross pools that just really, really stink of rotten eggs. And this is sort of like a planar, so that I think that this is sort of a hot springs, but the heat, right? The heat from it comes from a very sort of extra planar, like devilish kind of area. So the question is that, are there people that like bathe in this? Well, that's better than 10, so yeah. Okay. So the question, so they kind of like, this is probably a place where they camp, so this is probably a kind of a well-known spot. Probably make camp, and then people take sort of sulfur baths that I assume are probably supposed to have all kinds of medicinal health benefits, which may or may not be true. So I think that probably Leah and Omer probably take their time, and I think everybody kind of like takes a break and takes a nice little soak, even though it smells incredibly bad, right? It smells like rotten eggs in there, but they are definitely hanging out in sort of the sulfur springs. They're taking a glow up and feeling pretty good. Okay, so we're gonna add a 4 here. That's the second thing we came across. Now, obviously, if we were playing, so the way that I've set this up is obviously if I was running this as a group, I would have them have the ability to sort of like sit down and do some RP, do that. They could talk with some more of the people that are in the caravan, but we're running a solo adventure. We already had the conversation we really needed to have with Omer, who was really the big thing. We don't particularly interested in the caravan people because we're not employees of this. They haven't hired us for anything. So I think there's probably like some light conversation. There's some people they know, but I don't think that there is anything for us to sort of like focus in on to sort of make this more than what it is, which is just sort of like they have a nice little relax, and that's what they do. So I think that'll bring us on to our sort of next travel node. So let's find out what that is. Alright, that's a 16, so we run into a trap. So somebody has laid a trap for us. Let's see. Alright, so really what I want to know is if this is... Well, actually I don't need to know that. So we're traveling along and then somebody has laid a trap. And here we run across the trap. Now, it's very different. Like, we do have on this table a combat encounter, which would probably mean some sort of ambush, but I think I'm gonna gonna kind of mix these together. I think somebody like sets a trap and it's also part of an ambush. So, all right. So we know that there's a trap. So the question is does Leah see it? So let's give her a perception check, right? Ooh, she did not roll well. And with her -1 wisdom, but she is trained in it, so she does good. It's a 3. Her total is a 3. That is almost impossible to roll under for our DC. We do not roll under that, so we're gonna get hit with this trap. So I guess the big question is, and this will be an oracle question: does this trap hit Leah? Because if it doesn't hit Leah, it's probably gonna hit the mule. It could hit Omer. Well, let's see. Let's just ask first. Does it hit Leah? 10. So 10 means that we actually have an interrupted scene. So while they're walking along and they're about to set off this trap, right? Leah's about to step on this trap, or somebody's about to hit this trap. We're gonna have an interrupted scene. So something's gonna happen right before then. So let's find out what the nature of our scene is. And again, I'll add this document into Leah's thing maybe next time, before next time, if I get a chance to. I just kind of got pulled away for some other stuff this week. Alright, so we rolled a 10. That's information or technology. Extraordinary technology. Okay, so this is some sort of magical. So it's something probably magical in nature. And it's going to change or transform something. But this is technically before the trap happens. Let's get another subject. Let's see if there's another subject in here. It kind of gives us an idea of who's doing what. That's not really going to help us. That was a belief, creed, or doctrine, which doesn't really... Oh, well, I mean, it could. So it could be somebody who follows a specific belief, creed, or doctrine. So I guess, are these cultists? They could be cultists. They could be like very specific. Maybe I like the idea that this is a trap that's set up by bandits. But usually when we think about bandits, right, we kind of think about, oh, you know, like a group of thieves or something like this. But I think this is more sort of like the idea of like a Ronin band, right? Like sort of like a Japanese Ronin band. Like these are people that were professional soldiers, right? And then when war stops, and then suddenly they don't have a paycheck, so obviously one of the obvious routes that they take is they turn to banditry at that time. So these are somebody who follows something. All right, so we've got some people that follow a belief creed, and they are actually, this is happening before we hit that trap. So we're about to hit the trap, and then this group interferes, and they do so with some sort of, I think, magic, right? They do it with some sort of magic that's going to change or transform. Yeah, so I think that maybe this is a basic sort of like pitfall trap that it's a deadfall trap that somebody's set up. They've sort of dug out a portion of the path, and then they've set this deadfall, and then, you know, people have walked around it or come across it, and because, right, we're playing the main character, it's going to focus on us, on Leah, and so as Leah's walking, and then she's going to hit the trap because obviously she didn't see it, and as she's falling, I think that there is somebody uses sort of that mold earth cantrip and sort of like fills back up the hole, and so she only ends up falling like maybe a foot or two. She doesn't really fall the full, you know, or I guess we'd say because you only get hurt at 10 feet, so it fills up 5 feet of that. So she falls, but she doesn't take the fall damage, but she still like has to stand up, and she's only so like that much above like the ground level. She looks up, and obviously some people kind of come out, and they are obviously one is a magic user, and these are people who follow. So there's some sort of we talked about them. Maybe they're not bandits. Belief, creed, or doctrine. But who would they be? Maybe they're an adventuring party. No, I think I'm gonna go with the bandits. I'm gonna go with the bandit thing. I'm gonna go with the bandits. So these bandits, I think, are trying to catch somebody directly. They're trying to catch somebody specifically, and this trap was not made for us. And so when they see that Leah triggers it, they kind of snap into action, pull it up. And I think the caravan kind of comes to a stop as these people kind of flush out of the brush, and swords are pulled and everything gets really, really tense. Even though Leah's actually okay, and she sort of like stands up and kind of dusts herself off and kind of hops out. So how many people are in this group? In this bandit group? I think that there could be as many as 2 dozen, so I'm gonna roll. I think there's certainly more than one. I think there could be up to 2 dozen, so I'm gonna roll 2d12. That'll give us sort of an idea of how many people are here. Almost literally 2 dozen. 21. Alright, so there's a bunch of people that kind of come out of the woodworks here, looking for this, and they're looking for somebody very specific, which is obviously not us. Yeah, so maybe they're not bandits as much as maybe they are like bounty hunters. Maybe that makes more sense because they're looking for somebody specific. Maybe there's some sort of like bounty hunter code, right? That could be who they follow. Maybe they're a guild of bounty hunters. But obviously things get really, really tense. And then I think one of the people, probably whoever cast the spell to kind of stop Leah from falling all the way into the pit, kind of comes over and asks, are you okay? He kind of like offers a hand to sort of pull her out. But I think like as this person sort of breaks, right, there's going to be like 2 lines. There's the line of like the caravan people and the caravan guards, and like of these other obviously armed and armored people, and one of those people's crossing the line directly towards where the trap is and the person in the trap. So I think Steel kind of comes out. Now, the question that I have now that we'll roll for the Oracle is there any chance that we can stop this before it turns straight into a combat? So do we have an opportunity to do something before combat? 13, which is yes. So things are really tight, and people like swords kind of come halfway out of their scabbards as this person walks over, and this person sort of apologized, like, sorry, this obviously wasn't meant for you. We're looking for somebody else, and sort of reaches down and grabs Leah by the forearm and kind of helps pull her out. And Omer, I think, is cowering behind the mule because he is not a combat person. So Leah kind of pulls herself out and dusts herself off and kind of looks around. Now the question is that obviously these people are some sort of guild or bounty hunter group. That so they're probably going to have some sort of specific markings on it. Does she recognize any of those markings? So for that, I'm going to give her what I would call basically a history check. Basic intelligence. She's She's trained, so she gets a +5 to this. So does she recognize the emblem on like the sleeves or whatever? This person who's pulling her sort of out of the pit. That's 15. Let's check her DC. Oop, it's one too many. Yeah, so that's a DC 13. So yeah, she pulls it over and she does recognize that. All right, so I think that means that we're going to need to add a new faction in here. So we've got a new faction of people in here. So and I think we're going to put this. I'm going to technically put this under adventurers, even though they're a subgroup, I think. Though we may have to ask her a question if Imbar is part of this group, because we still have Imbar. We haven't come across her yet. She's not going to have nice things to say to us when we do. So we have a... We're just going to call it a Bounty Hunter Guild. Do we have a name for that Bounty Hunter Guild? I may hold on. I may reserve that for later. Let me think about it. Let me see if something comes to mind. What would be a good name? I've got a mercenary guild name that I use a lot, but I don't want to use that name in case we do actually run across a mercenary guild. What would be a good name? And something. I want it to be something a little kind of tough, but maybe. I'm just gonna leave it how it is right now. All right, but that does give us another faction that maybe we'll learn more about as we continue our adventures. So there is an opportunity for her, and I think Leah is going to... She recognizes that this person talked to her. She's going to try to calm the group a little bit, so she'll try to do just kind of a basic persuasion, like everybody kind of calm down, like everything's okay, I'm fine. She's not very convincing, though. Oof. So that's a 5. I mean, I'll roll the DC, but it's probably going to be above 5. It is indeed. It's 13. All right. So she tries to convince people, but this person's still got their hands on her, and I think it's a tense situation. Maybe these people kind of pick some people to be their caravan guards that maybe aren't veterans, so they're not super confident in stressful, high tense situations. And I think, we have that classic sort of movie trope where somebody has a knocked arrow and they're sort of holding it. They're sort of holding it and pointing it at somebody, and then somebody twitches or something and they lose the arrow. And so I think, unfortunately, we tried to stop it. We didn't do a good job. We're gonna go into combat. All right. Well, wasn't really what I was planning to do, but okay. Didn't think this was going to turn into a combat, but it is a combat. So I'm just going to change this to Bounty Hunter Trap. Okay. So let's roll initiative for Leah. Omer's going to be a non-combatant in this, so he'll go last. He'll take care of the mule, basically. Basically, he's probably just going to be making morale checks to see if he runs away. So Leah got a 17. That's pretty good. All right, so we need an encounter. Let's roll 2d6. All right, so actually we're at a little bit of an advantage, so that's good. So this is actually just going to be a medium encounter. But we want, right? These are basically all going to be humanoids. Right, these are all people that we're dealing with. So let's generate a random encounter for us. I don't really want a commoner. Well, I guess I don't know why a commoner would be part of. Maybe it's like a hireling or something like that. So we have the cultist, and then we have a commoner, and those will be that sort of. And if you've watched the previous streams, we know that basically this is not the entire fight. This is just sort of like Leah's portion of the fight. Otherwise, the caravan guards deal with the bounty hunters. They have their own things kind of going on. Everybody kind of pairs off, right? So this will be sort of like her portion of this combat, even though she doesn't really want to fight. But as soon as that happens, blades are drawn and people people go into combat mode, like that's just where it is. So Leah knows that these people and the person that attacks, that helped her up, is probably going to end up being the person that attacks her, or it's probably their apprentice or hireling, that commoner who's going to come and attack. Now I know the commoners go on 10. I don't know what the stats are for the cultists, so let's look that up real fast. Oh, good. They're on the same page. Those stat blocks are on the same page. That'll be helpful. I'll have to flip back and forth. All right. So they go on 11. Okay, so it's going to be the cultist and then the commoner. Because I just use passive initiative usually when I'm doing this. And for a solo, I don't want to roll for all these guys. So I just roll for our main character. Then all the bad guys take 10 on initiative. Which means they always kind of end up sort of in the middle of combat. So if I roll high, I go before them. If I roll low, I go after them. It's not a big deal. Alright, the cultist has 9 hit points. The commoner has 4. But Leah gets to go first. There are things that happen, and I think that at this point, like, the commoner, it's very clear that this is going to be aggressive action. Like, the commoner is probably charging in at her, even though technically she has the initiative on it. Right, this guy starts, lets out their war cry and has, some sort of like basic spear or something like that, or maybe like a club or something. They're commoners, so they have a club. They're rushing in to attack with, and then it's Leah's go. Leah's dealt with some commoners before. They know that they don't take much damage. She's really not trying to kill necessarily. Right, she doesn't really want to kill anybody. So I think what she's going to do is she's going to try to do a little martial arts judo move here rather than do damage. So what she's going to do is she's going to try to do this sort of martial arts, because she's got this commoner guy like just sort of charging down on her, and she's going to try to like sidestep and try to trip him into this pit. But then she's also going to use her mold earth to lower the pit back down to 10 feet, so this guy will get stuck in there. So that's going to be, I'm just going to make her make basically, I guess it really doesn't matter. Her strength and dexterity is the same. So this is just going to be a +1 to whatever she rolls. Ooh, that's a 3. I'm going to guess that's not successful. But let's roll. This is going to be an opposed roll, so let's see what the commoner does. Nope, commoner not falling for it. Okay, so she does that, but that wouldn't have been her action, because her action was going to be to do that. So he tries to sidestep and trip this person, but they sort of like turn to try to shift themselves around to kind of come at her. So let's see, she will use a spell. Gosh, what spell will she use? Because she really doesn't want to hurt this person. Actually, you know what? She's just going to try to brain this guy with her staff and maybe just knock him out. Let's go. So she tries to like do this fancy judo move and then try to get out of the way and trip him into it, and then he like rolls around like still on her with the club, and then she just pop. She just kind of rabbit punches him in the right between the eyes with the end of her staff. This guy's gonna, like, there's no way that we're not gonna roll enough damage and right, this is all gonna be non-lethal. We don't want to kill this guy, but oh yeah, yeah, that's 14 points of damage. The commoner has 4 hit points. Yeah, she basically just got like a professional boxer's punch to the face. It just kind of goes down like a sack of potatoes. This person's screaming at her, trying to hit her with a cudgel. All right. Our commoner is out of the fight. That leads us to our cultist. Well, we've now taken an aggressive action against them, so obviously our cultist is gonna give us a little reprisal. Now, we said that the cultist was the person right next to her. And they have a sword, apparently. Even though we said this was the magic person, but they're already in melee combat. I think that they would probably pull their weapon anyway, so they're gonna pull their scimitar and make an attack against Leah. +3. Well, definitely gonna hit. Oh, no. Oh, thank goodness. It's only +1 to the attack, so it's 7. Attack for 7 of her 8 hit points in 1. Okay, so this just went from a trying to stay civil, trying not to really hurt anybody too badly. I mean, even though we did brain that guy probably definitely has a concussion that we just hit with the staff, but not dead. And then this person just like opens us up with a sword slash. So this is, and this goes. I'm sorry, I wrote it 7. We lost 7 hit points. We have 1 hit point. So that puts us in a very bad position. Of course, it is Leah's turn now. And so I think that when it comes down to something like that, and it's going to be a spot where, right, it's do or die, right? She wants to do non-lethal, but she can't take another hit, or she's out. And even though, maybe she probably knows these people probably aren't going to try to kill her, but when you get cut with a sword, somebody's attacking you with a sword, it's real hard to do non-lethal stabbing, slashing. So I think she's just going to, we've got Igni. Let's use Igni. We got a brand new Igni. And so Igni's with her, probably would be with her most times. I assume probably like on her shoulder or in her back or something, and sort of like scrambles out and probably onto her, like probably holding onto like the back of her neck or something. And then sort of like hops forward and then opens up its mouth, and we're going to use that fire breath. He's going to get that 1. All right, so it is a dex save. They only have to hit an 11. There's a high chance they're gonna make this save. Oh, it's gonna be close. So it's 9. It's gonna depend on what their bonuses are. They have a +1. And this is not a charm or frighten, so they don't get advantage on the save. So that's a total of 10 for them. 11 is the DC. They fail it, they're gonna take 2d6 fire damage. Right, it's 2d6, yes. So they're gonna take the full 2d6. So this may take them out. They got 9 hit points. They could still be in the game. And that's gonna be bad news for Leah. Oh, so they only take 4. They've got 5 hit points. But, yeah, Igni lights this guy up, this cultist up with some fire. Breathes on fire, magma kind of onto them. Flecks of ember and whatnot. So they go from 9, so they have 5 hit points. It hadn't really been something I considered. I didn't really think about this beforehand, whether I was going to put the familiar in their own initiative. Well, they act on their own. In 5e, they technically act on their own, but you can ask them. Okay, let's just roll for it. I'm just gonna roll a 20. If I roll high, Leah doesn't get to act. You can't roll any lower than 1. So she does get to act. I gambled on the low numbers, and I got exactly what I wanted. So Leah will get an opportunity to act. So we're gonna let Igni do their own thing. It does its own thing on its turn, or on her turn, but she's not in control of it. So this thing sort of like scrambles out of her pack and like onto her shoulder and just breathes this gigantic cone of fire all over this person, and they're like, ah! But luckily, I don't know if Leah's in the way or whatever, but we didn't get too bad of damage from this. We had not even average damage from that roll. Because average damage would have put down the cultist. And we didn't get that. But Leah does get to go. That's what we determined. Leah's still right next to this person, though. Which means if she does any casting there, she has disadvantage on any of those attacks. So instead, she's going to use her first level spell, and she is just right. She's in fight or flight mode. She's up against the rail. She knows like she can't take that hit again. She can't take another hit. Like, she's already on the rails, right? She's got this just awful gash on her from this person's scimitar, and so she can't do anything that attacks. She can't really move away. Most of her stuff's area attack, but she does have magic missile, so she's just gonna hammer this guy with magic missile, and I don't even think they can live through that. I think magic missile at a minimum does 6 points damage, but let's roll it anyway, just for fun. So she's like holding her guts, holding her like the cut with one hand. She's still got the staff in the other. Agni's breathing off of her shoulder, so there's like that heat that's kind of coming off. And so she's kind of squinting against it, and then she kind of just stabs the staff like into, I think, center mass, just like pokes this cultist in the chest with the end of her staff and just lets off magic missile. Oh yeah. That's 9, 10, 11 points of damage. Yeah, just boo, 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 boo. And just rips right through this guy, and that guy goes down. So I think that means that the fighting will come to an end. I think the bounty hunters will retreat. Right? Obviously, we kind of use Leah's success in a fight to sort of give an idea about, well, actually we could roll for it. Are they successful? Do they drive, let's just ask Norcold, do they drive the bounty hunters away? No. No, they don't, but people break, and then everybody's like, no, okay, time out, all right, everybody, like, people are dying. Like, bring it down a notch. But we do, that is 9, which means, so it's a no, but we do get an edge out of it, so let's see what our edge is. 4. Now, 4's a really interesting one. We have a secret, a flashback or backstory. Yeah, we're gonna go with flashback. I think that Leah starts to sort of like, as people sort of pull away, and there's no sort of immediate threat to her. I think Leah kind of falls on her hands and knees, and she's sort of like clutching the wound in her chest, and she's like hyperventilating, and like her eyes are unfixed, and then she's thinking back. This brings her right back. Remember, Leah doesn't want to be an adventurer, so we're going to deal with that thread real quick. We're thinking back, and it conjures up that very visceral memory with Imbar being sort of a hireling to help this adventuring party as they delve a dungeon. She thinks back to that in that time, and she remembers them asking for her opinion about a very specific sort of like arcane sigil, about this arcane trap, and she does her best, but she doesn't really know that much about it, and she kind of gives them the information she knows. She thinks that she thought she made it clear that she didn't know, and they kind of either misinterpret or decide that she knows what she's doing, and so they try to fiddle with or go around the arcane trap, and it goes off, and she just kind of remembers this sort of visceral image of just saying, like 3 people in front of her just get annihilated, just basically getting Thanos snapped out of existence of these people that hired her, and she's known for weeks and weeks and weeks. And just, they're there, they try to do this thing, and then boom, they're gone. Like, just gone. And so now, being in that sort of high-stress situation, being on the edge of, potentially dying again, seeing those gouts of flame from Igni, and it's just sort of bringing it all back to her. Now, the question is she going to pass out? I think it's highly likely. So we're gonna roll a d20. We're gonna roll our oracle roll, and we're gonna get a +5 because I think that this is an incredibly traumatic sort of like resurgence of this memory. I think her body's just gonna shut down. Okay, 8 plus 5 is 13, which is a yes. Just a straight yes. And then she's breathing, and then, you know, there's sort of that off distance, sort of like echoey, like people are talking. You see like sort of shadows as she gets sort of tunnel vision of people sort of like asking her and coming closer, and then the world fades to black. Okay, well, it's gonna be interesting. So obviously she's gonna wake up after some time, and we're gonna say that that's gonna constitute a short rest. So we'll go ahead and spend her hit die while she's unconscious, which is a d6 plus 2. All right, so she gets 6 hit points back. So she's back to 7, but she no longer has her hit die. And we're kind of extrapolating. We're kind of stretching things out for overland travel. So she's going to have used her spell slot, her one that she has, because the other one goes to mage armor. And she used her hit die, and she's not going to get those back till she spends basically sort of like what we consider a camp day or resting in an inn or something like that. They basically take a day where they're not traveling. But she's going to wake up. So the question is does she wake up with the caravan? Like, are they still with the caravan? Just a flat roll. It's going to be 50-50. Because you're not going to stop a whole caravan for one unconscious person. No. Caravan's gone. Okay. Follow-up question. We didn't roll for Omer. We don't know if Omer took off with... So we'll just ask. Did Omer take off with the mule and the supplies? No. So Omer's there. With the mule. Are we with the bounty hunters? Yes. Natural 20. Getting a lot of natural 20s today. So then we're gonna get an edge from that. What's the edge we bring with that? 18. Lose, gain, or fumble a resource. So we're gonna gain some sort of resource, something we can use. I think it's probably gonna be something of monetary value, right? Or no, actually, I know what it's gonna be. I think it's gonna be a healing potion. We know these are bounty hunters; they're dangerous people. They deal with runaways and stuff like that. So I think that she'll get a healing potion out of this, and I think she wakes up. With the bounty hunters, so they probably set camp. So they've set camp and they're dealing with their dead and wounded. And that's when Leia sort of like wakes up in sort of a tent with sort of like a, you know, blanket pulled over her. And I assume that Omer's probably not in the tent, but I think that she kind of wakes up, realizes she's in a tent, and kind of tries to sit up. Oh, but she's got this giant sword slash on her chest, so she kind of lays down again, even though she kind of feels and looks at it, and clearly it's been dressed. Her wound's been dressed. And so she's instead of just kind of like cranes her head to look, and she's still kind of bleary-eyed, but it's definitely sort of fading light outside. And she can see that Omer's sitting down with another person, and they're seems like they're having tea with Leah's teapot, and they're having a chat. And so I think she tries to she kind of calls out for Omer, and like her lips are dry and cracked, and she kind of croaks the voice out. Right, she doesn't really get a good thing. But that's enough to sort of like draw the two's attention. They kind of maneuver into the tent. It's really tight, but they're both over her. think the person that Omer's talking to kind of like pulls back the sheet and kind of looks at the dressing and the wound on Leah, and Omer's like, "Oh, you gave us a scare. I didn't know if you were gonna pull through. I saw that you were injured really badly. Are you okay?" And I think Leah tries to pull herself up on her elbows and then kind of like lets out like a wounded cry, and then the other person who's with him kind of pushes her back down, like, "You need to rest. You need to rest. Look, I'm sorry this happened. That's not how we thought the day was going to go. But looking at your wounds, I think you're going to be okay. You're going to be all right. Your friend here," and kind of points at Omer, just kind of telling us that you were on your way to Karjunton. The caravan went ahead, so it's kind of you. I guess it's a good question. I don't really consider this like a full oracle question. It's just kind of want a yes or no. Are there other sort of caravan people that are also behind being healed? Yes. Yeah, absolutely. So I'm not going to take the edge because we don't need the edge there. That's not what we're looking for. Okay, so, and they're like, we stay behind to sort of deal with the other people while we're still on the stakeout for our bounty. Alright. So that's sort of the situation. They talk a little bit. I think Leah probably asks about the commoner, and then kind of, apologizes for, striking down one of their own. How does that go over? Well, let's see how heartfelt. I mean, I feel like she's pretty heartfelt about it. Well, let's give her a persuasion check. So that's a total of 9. It's not great. DC's 12. So she tries to kind of like give her respects, and then the person kind of like waves her off. It's like, look, bounty hunting's a dangerous business. You can die any day. So you don't really need to apologize for that. But the other person, and we don't really need to make up a name for this person because they're not going to be important to the story, is okay. Thank you. And just kind of they're concussed, right? They have a hell of a headache, but they're alive. So you minimized the damage that you could do. Thank you. That's appreciated. But still, like, it's not like a heartfelt appreciation. He's just kind of, he's paying it lip service. He doesn't really care that much about probably a lot of the other people. I think these are a lot of companions of opportunity, rather than, a very tight-knit band of like close friends. They're not like an adventuring group. They're kind of like professional bounty hunters that are working together on a case. But probably do most of their bounty hunting alone or in smaller groups than, the 20-something people we have. Or I guess just 20 now, at least, at a maximum, at least 20 now, because Leah killed one of them. So yeah, so that's sort of the situation. I think she'll rest overnight, and she'll probably be fine. I think that this guy says, here, I'm sorry that this happened. Please take this. Hopefully it'll aid you in your time of need. And I think he gives her a healing potion, just a straight up healing potion. So I'm gonna go ahead and add that because that's gonna be the resource we get out of this. A healing potion. So we'll go ahead and add that in there. So she has a healing potion too. Actually, I'm just going to change that. So these are a little bit easier to read. They're a little bit bigger. Instead of taking up 2 lines. I think she thanks them, and then she probably hangs out with Omer for a little bit. And probably she's kind of in and out of consciousness. Like, right, she took a really heavy wound. And so it's just really going to be a question of, her resting it off. So, but she is sort of in camp, so I do want to find out. We're going to roll our d12 and see if anything happens during the night, during the evening. No. We roll a 1 or a 12, so nothing happens. So the night passes uneventfully, which means she'll get her hit dice back. She'll heal up completely, which is good. And she'll have her 1 spell back because she obviously uses her 2nd spell every day to cast Mage Armor, especially when she's out and about. So yeah, I think she wakes up in the morning with the group. I guess is the group still here? Are the bounty hunters still here? I think that's likely that they're still here because they were clearly laying a trap for somebody. So I'm gonna give them a +3 to this roll. Oh, but that's an 8, which means no. So I think she kind of comes to, and as she's coming to, like they're picking up camp and moving on. So I guess the question that I really have is, I guess I have 2 questions. One will lead to the other. The first is, do they draw any sort of additional? Do they draw sort of a? Are these going to be a recurring NPC? Is this a group that's taking an interest in Leia? Obviously, they saw her do her magic. They saw that she has a familiar. Obviously, she was able to take out two of their group before she herself was put out. And I think she slept pretty fitfully. I think because of the Imbar stuff. So, do these people... Basically, what I want to know is that as they're getting ready to pack up camp, they're like, hey, if you're ever in Karjunton or wherever, look me up. Let's see if anybody's going to be like, hey, you should look me up. 9. So no. That would give us an edge, but we already got an edge out of them. The healing potion is a pretty powerful reward for that, so I don't really want to push any more on that. Well, maybe I'll just say that no, I don't want to do that. I was going to say that they get a recommendation or something, but no. All right, so what other thing? Do we even know who they're hunting? That's a good question. No. Again, that would have been another no with an edge, but again, we already got an edge for this scene, so I don't want to push that any further. All right, so this was that was sort of a one thing that kind of took us outside of what we were looking for. So that ended up being a bounty hunter trap and fight, in which she was gravely wounded. Right, but in the morning, things are fine. They're packing up. They're heading out. I guess the question... No, we already said that we're kind of not hanging out with them. So they're going somewhere else. They're chasing their bounty, so they're not following the road like we are. And so we have... we're about 2/3 of the way through... Or 3/4 of the way through the journey. So we're almost to Karjunton, so we must be only like a couple days, 2 or 3 days outside of the town. Or city. So let's find out at this point what that final travel node is going to be, because they're going to back on. Obviously, we lost the caravan, we lost the bounty hunters, we are traveling. It's just going to be Leah and Omer. So it's not the greatest situation. They'd love to have more people. It really makes them vulnerable. But that's where they're going to be traveling, so we'll just go ahead and delete these right now. We already finished that fight. So let's do a d20, and let's find out what our final travel node is on our way there. 11. Okay, we have some sort of navigational obstacle. Alright. Well, we're traveling across flat ground. So there's probably... So it's not like we need to go probably up or down vertically. So we don't really... So... Probably the mule's not the problem. Ooh, but it is spring. Which means that probably the major bridge right? It's mid-spring, so that probably means that the I should roll my d4. Well, we should do that. We'll get there. Hold on. And we need to roll for. Sorry, we have d8 rations. Right? Because we just finished 3. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, okay. Alright, so we're good on rations. We're gonna take another 2 on here, which is fine. Looks like we're gonna reach the city without any issues as far as con saves go. I mean, even if we rolled a 4 at this point for our final travel node, we'd still get there just fine. So I think that it's springtime, which means that the snow melt, the winter melt's coming out, which means that the rivers swell during that time, right? As the weather starts to get warmer. And while that's happening, one of the things that happens sort of like, especially pre-industrial times, is that they have a tendency to knock out bridges, right? Rising waters, like water flow of the river tends to, as the river gets more fierce, it's not uncommon for them to take out an entire bridge. So I think that it does take out the bridge. Now the question is there a ford nearby that they can use? Because that's the navigational obstacle. It's that there's a swollen river in front of them, and this road leads to where a bridge used to be, and now there's not a bridge there right now, and it has to be rebuilt, which is sort of an annual kind of construction kind of thing. So is there a nearby... The question is not necessarily is there a nearby ford, which was what we... ford or ferry. The question is does Leah know of it? Yeah, since it's Leah, we're gonna give her... She lived in Karjunton for over a decade. There's a good chance that in her comings and goings that she traveled along this road specifically many, many times. So does she know... So I'm gonna give her a history check. Does she know of a nearby ford? That's really good. So she has +5 to this, remember, so that's 22. So let's check the DC. DC was 11. So yeah, she knows exactly where there's a ford is. It's probably not that far away. Now we'll take them a little bit out of their way. So the question is are they going to run into some sort of random encounter during that crossing? No. Okay. So luckily we were able to have that, so let's say washed out bridge. But we didn't determine the type. Is it a ford? No. So if it's not a ford, is it another bridge? No. Well, that only leaves one option, so it must be a ferry. So, obviously it's a ferry, so do we need to pay at this ferry? I think that's extremely likely, so +5. 15, yeah. So, we're going to pay a ferry toll. Let me see if I think I may have some ferry toll stuff in here. Let me double check, though. Okay, so I don't really have anything specifically, so what I'm going to do is instead roll a d20. We want to roll low on this to determine sort of the denomination of coinage that we need to use. Oh, unfortunately we rolled high, so it's gold. So usually that means paying a gold piece per... And the way that this is usually done is by pair of legs. So we have to pay one for Omer, which Omer will pay himself, but we do have to pay one for Leah. And then I think because, well, no, Omer's carrying his own stuff again, so Leah's going to have to pay for the mule. So it's 3 gold for Leah, because, of course, mules have 2 legs. Alright, so she's got to pay 3 gold out of pocket. That's pretty easy. Probably not really what you want to do. Somebody's making a mint off of that ferry. And it takes them a little bit of time, but they get across. There's not really any issues. So, Washout Bridge, there to ferry crossing. So, I guess the question is because we did that, is there going to be an extra day? Do we need to do another travel node? No. Okay, perfect. So we have no other additional issues that are going to keep us from reaching Karjunton. And we do. So we reach Karjunton, and let's find out. And again, so Leah hasn't been here in a few weeks. Or I guess probably at this point, because it's just 2 weeks to get back. And then it probably would have been 2 weeks to go out. And then she was almost in Split Valley Oasis for 2 weeks. So it's been about, it's been a bit. It's been about a month, I guess. Because our calendar's a little bit different than our real world calendar. So that's about 6 weeks, which is about a month. So she's been gone for about a month. The last time she was here, which was a month ago, and she wasn't here for very long. She basically showed up here to try to talk to Harol and couldn't. And then moved on. Alright. So what I really need to know is there anything going on in town when they first get there? So it's a D12. If I roll a 12, something's going on in town. I did not. Alright, so there's nothing special going on, nothing notable going on in town. Karjunton, but it's definitely got sort of that wash of nostalgia of coming back, right? Like you feel like when you travel back to your hometown, if you've lived away for a while, right? That everything's kind of familiar, but also kind of not, because she hasn't been here in many years, or really spent time living here in many years. So everything's got sort of that weird kind of thing. But we also are going to have to pay to get in to the city. 9. Okay, so that's silver pieces. So, what, 1 silver piece per head, so she's going to need to pay another 3 because she's got to do it for the mule as well. And do they have lodging for the night? That's what they're going to ask for. Of course, they're going to go find lodging. Now, the question is now they're entering Karjunton, and we do have some stuff written up for Karjunton. One of the things I did in between sessions last time. Just kind of give us some background information about Karjunton. So there's about 52,000 people that live in Karjunton. It's a pretty diverse population. And actually, let me move this over to the left side, since that's what we're doing. Let me swap here. Oop, there we go. So that way you can see more. So we've got Karjunton. It's pretty cosmopolitan city. Not quite a third of the population are dwarves, with humans being, about a fifth of the population, and then the rest is kind of spread across half-orcs and elves and gnomes. There is a surprising amount of centaurs, which is kind of weird. And then some tieflings, and then just sort of a 10% mix of others, right? And the city is led by a council of mages. So we have magic users, which is not super surprising. We do know that at Riverside Conservatory that magic is one of the colleges within the university, right? It is something you can study there, but it is not just its main focus. It's just one of the colleges of the university. But it's not surprising that in a place that teaches magic, that there would be a magic council that's kind of in charge. With a wizard, a bard, a paladin, a warlock, and another wizard. So obviously, in addition to that, the academy, they're also known for trade. It's on a river confluence. Let's see. It's got a very low crime rate, which is actually surprising. So we have quite a few people here, and the watch is somewhat lenient, but there actually isn't that much crime, which is nice. Which I assume is one of the things, and this is all stuff that Leah knows about this because she lived here for a while. And we've got 8 wards in the city. So that's what we know. So, and these wards will kind of give us options for places to stay. So, we could stay in the Keys, which is down by the river confluence, where two rivers come together. That's kind of a low-class place, and it's a hostel. It's cheap, but it's not the greatest place to stay. Probably not going to stay in the government area where they have sort of like diplomatic suites that are lined up in like sort of row houses or like townhouses that you can rent out, like brownstones. I think there's a couple others, right? We can stay in. Oh, there's a flop house, which is in the slums. So don't probably want to stay there. So I guess we'll probably stay in. Oh, that's a good question. Do we want to stay? Would Leah want to stay in the academic area where there's a dormitory that she can take residence in? How do they feel about that? This can be a 1d20 roll, and this is both for. Do I want to do this 1d20? I may do a different roll for this, because this is also going to be Omer's input as well. No, let's just do an oracle roll. So, do they feel comfortable staying in that? Because there's a chance that, even though they haven't been here for a few years, there is certainly a chance that they could be recognized by people in that area, which could make things kind of awkward because, I mean, they're disgraced researchers. So let's just give them a 1d20 oracle roll. Okay, so they don't feel comfortable staying there, so they're going to stay in the Keys, which is sort of a hostel, sort of a middle of the road lodging situation. It's not great. They probably prefer to stay in the dormitories, both because it's familiar to them as a setting and because it's a little bit more upscale. It's not like they're hurting that much for coin, at least for staying someplace. But they are going to stay there. Shopping. No, I could have thought for sure. I could have sworn I had that stuff in here for lodging prices. I don't know why I would not put it in here. Oh, room and board rates. There we go. So, it's still kind of on the low end, I'd say, as a hostel. That's staying down by the docks is not a great place to stay. So I think it's on the low end, but it's obviously not in the slums. So I'm gonna roll with advantage and take sort of the higher one here. So it's either a silver piece or 5 silver pieces for the night. So I guess I'll just roll a d6 or a d4, d6. 4 silver pieces. Okay, so it's going to cost them 4 silver pieces a night. So they'll find lodging. And so they will find lodging down at the Keys at the hostel. There we go. So they are going to be... And actually, I'll just capitalize this. Keys. Alright, so we've paid that, and that's sort of, I think that's probably a good place to stop. So they made it all the way here. We ran into some groups that we didn't really know anything about. We found out, we ended up finding out about a new group, right? So we found out about the bounty hunters, and I had to run in with them. In all consideration, I guess from a mechanical viewpoint, a positive. Negative viewpoint as far as probably where Leah would actually be concerned as a person. She had to relive that sort of traumatic experience, and she nearly died. On top of her traumatic previous adventuring situation. but all things considered, I mean, she came out of it mechanically with a healing potion, so it could have gone a lot. Whereas she also got the grease scroll, which is a net gain as well. And they've got coinage, so they're not, and they'll get room and board for the price. So they'll get 1 meal a day, which is probably breakfast. So they'll get 1 meal a day, and then we'll have to figure out some other food source. But they are here. Now the question is, how do you approach Riverside Conservatory, and how do you deal with the Myrmidon plate? Oh, I forgot we need to stable the mule as well. Ooh, I didn't roll for the rations. Roll for the mule's rations. Let me do that. So we had 4. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so the mule's rations are fine. Our rations are fine. Okay, everything's copacetic there. But we do have to roll for the lodging for the mule. Right, so it's another 2 silver pieces a night. And so let me add that. So it's actually 6 silver pieces a night for lodging and stabling. Hustle. And then we'll take the extra 2 silver points away from. Oop. In the wrong document. Okay, so now she's down to nothing as far as silver pieces are concerned. Because they paid for the 1 night. Alright. Well, we got a lot of questions about what's going to happen next time, huh? We're really going to get into it. So we've got 2 things that are of primary importance. Are they related? We don't know that. The likelihood is not, but they could be related. The corrupted Myrmidon plate might have something that's elemental, and that might have something to do with the dragon research and with, you know, whatever happened to Harol, because they still have to figure out whatever happened to Harol and what that has to do with their research. They also need to see if their research is still around, so we've got some things to do in town. Unfortunately, most of that hinges on them getting access to Riverside Conservatory. The unfortunate thing about that is that they are barred from the conservatory because they're disgraced academics from there, right? They both used to work for the place, and then because of their research was so poorly received that, to save face, the conservatory basically, you know, exiled and banished them all, and basically don't allow them to access it. And unfortunately, we don't have an easy fix for that because Leah does not have any sort of spell or anything that can sort of like alter her appearance or anything like that. So we've got to figure out how Leah and Omer are going to get into this place. And, you know, at this point, we have Omer with us. I think I'm going to go ahead and bump Omer up. I think I'm going to make him... He's carrying around now, so I think I'm going to go ahead and make him a fully fleshed out sidekick for next time. I think I'm going to do that, and I'm probably going to make him an expert and make him very much not combat oriented. But maybe give us some help in some other things. Since he's been kicking around with us, I mean, as far as in-game time, a few weeks now, and he is interested in helping us. Everything that we're doing also ties to Omer as well, so it makes sense to sort of, at this point, bump Omer up into a sidekick, so he's not just, you know, set dressing, which I think I want to do. So, but we're going to use basically the commoner stat block for him. So I mean, he's not going to be by any means powerful in any sort of way. He's probably going to be inferior to Leah in just about every way, except maybe his wisdom. Right, his wisdom's going to be higher than Leah's, but she's going to basically dwarf him in every other area. But it'll be nice to have somebody who's a little bit more competent who can maybe make some checks by themselves, which he hasn't really been able to right now. And that's where we'll pick it up next time. So hopefully you guys enjoyed the stream. I'm having a lot of fun with it. A lot of twists and turns. I didn't think we were going to do the bounty hunter thing. That was a big surprise. Luckily, that was the only really detrimental thing to us on the journey, on the overland journey. So let me know if you guys like the overland journey thing. We'll probably be doing that a lot more, as well as some of the local hex exploration stuff as we go on. And yeah, and that's everything that's kind of going on. If you're enjoying this, we also have other stuff. We have you can, in addition to following me on Twitch, you can subscribe to the YouTube channel. Everything's all the same. You see that down below. It's at Red Ragged Fiend. You can hop over there. You can watch the old episodes getting caught up if you haven't done that, so you can know what the heck we're talking about here. If you want to know who Omer is, if you want to know anything about Harol, if you want to know about Ott, if you want to know what the heck is a water myrmidon and why is that important, and why we're even here and what we're doing, then I'd say go back and watch some of the old episodes. You can watch them all the way from the beginning. Especially at this point, I think it would be probably really helpful if you're new to go back and take a stab at episode 2, where we actually build Leah as a character, so you can kind of get the backstory. You can learn about like why she kind of had this panic attack at the end of that fight, and what's going on with her and Imbar, and who Imbar is and all that stuff. And I'm sure that will come up at some point, but it hasn't yet. But if you want to know sort of the backstory and what's going on with them, that's probably the best way to do it. In addition to that, if you want to use some of the DM resources that I'm using and other sort of things, you can find our store over on DriveThruRPG if you want to try out running D&D by yourself, or you want some sort of dungeon master kind of helpful stuff. We have stuff for sale up on there. I say for sale because it's pay what you want. So if you want to do it, if you want to pick it up for free, that's great. Or if you want to throw us a few dollars, and that helps us, buy equipment and pay for the website and things like that, because we also have a website. And actually, before I get off, I do want to talk about the website a little bit, just because I got some feedback and I had some people asking me questions about specifically sort of the local hex crawling stuff that we did in some of the previous episodes. And they were like, I could follow it, but I didn't know where the resources were if I wanted to try it out for myself. And so the best place to do that is actually to just go to the website. There we go, loading it up. So we have this is a new one we did, so I'll just put that up because that's what we put up at the end of April, and actually go through mapping a larger portion of the world we've been working on, which is a place called the Gyre. You can kind of see it right there. So it has 120 keyed hexes, and they're all sort of the region-size hexes. So to put that in perspective, when you're looking at this map, and you're looking at it especially from left to right, it's actually covering hundreds and hundreds of miles. Is what's being represented right there. To kind of put that in perspective, so this is, we'll go back up here. So this is sort of our world map at the Atlas side. So the area that we're looking at is that sort of thin line of light blue on the left side between the left continent and the central continent. That's the place that I sort of blew up and has the 120 locations in it. Like, that's a very small part of the world, but that still represents hundreds and hundreds of miles of things that are kind of going on. And you could run a lifetime's worth of like D&D entire campaigns 1 through 20 sort of in that area and never have to like redo stuff. But I do want to say, so if you're looking for some of the stuff that we've been doing and what we're working on, I'd say go to over here to this world building process post that you can see in the top part. And we talk about, and it kind of links to all the articles for the specific stuff that we're doing. So if you go down here from Atlas to region mapping, you can see these 3 ones that we have up right now. The Gyre, that's the latest one that we just did. But before that, we talked about region hex map stocking. And you can get that up here. And that'll give you information about how the hexes all work together and line up, and what we roll to put into those hexes, and points of interest to work with. So if you're interested in that stuff, in here I kind of go into explaining each one of the little things that we use to stock. So if you're interested in that, that's the easiest way to sort of get that information in a way that you can reference, rather than trying to pick it out from the stream. It'll be a lot easier. I think that's it, though. I don't think I have anything else to talk about. Like I said, we have one of my groups is changing back to in person. We used to play those games on Sundays, so the streaming schedule might change a little bit, because during this time I would normally be playing D&D. So if that's the case, of course you guys will have plenty of I've noticed that, and we might see these streams go from Sunday streams back over to maybe Saturday streams or some other time. But that's sort of everything that I've got right now. I hope you guys had fun. I'm having a ton of fun with this series, and I'm eager to continue it, and especially now that we're sort of getting into the meat of Leah's adventure. You can kind of think of everything before that as sort of the prologue, and now we're sort of in chapter 1. We've got to figure out what this means and what's going on, especially now that we're a full-fledged level 1 wizard and not the level 0 character we were to start out. So I'm really interested to see what happens. And of course, I'm making this up and we're using the random rolls to figure things out as we go. So you guys know about as much as I do as far as what's going on with Leah and what's going on with the adventure and plot at large. So I'm really interested to have you guys come along with me and kind of figure that out. But that's it for me. I hope you guys enjoyed everything. That's it. Hope you guys enjoy the rest of your Sunday. Have a good week. And I'll see you maybe sometime during the week. Of course, follow to get the notifications for that. Otherwise, I'll see you guys on next Sunday for the next stream, and we'll figure out what's going on with Leah and see how they try to find a way to get themselves into Riverside Conservatory and find out some information about things. Until then, bye.